Today is our third session on the noun phrase, and we'll continue to talk a little bit about reference. We'll then also talk about articles and finally pronouns. So last session we looked at reference as well, and we saw that reference is the main communicative function of noun phrases. So reference is then the term used to express the relation between a noun phrase and the content it expresses, so the actual thing that we're trying to describe. And this actual thing is called the referent. So we saw that there were three types of difference: unique, specific, and generic. So today we're looking at referential orientation. And this has to do with where the referent is located. First is exophora, and this is when the referent is located outside of the linguistic context. So if I say, "I'll have that car, please," and I point to a car, well, this car is not actually inside what came before. It's not in the linguistic context, but it's found outside. So it's found in real life. And we also call this situational reference. So it's found in the situation that I'm in. If I'm at the dinner table and I ask someone to pass the salt, then again, the salt is in the situation. It's not necessarily the case that I have mentioned the salt before. Another type of referential orientation is then endophora, and this is when the referent is located within the linguistic context. Now, a subtype of this is anaphora, and we talked about this last time as well. And this is when the referent is located in the preceding linguistic context, and then the referent is called the antecedent. So within anaphora, we have two subtypes. So the first is repetitive anaphora. So this is when the head of the referring nominal expression is identical to that of the antecedent. So if I say there is a man knocking on the door, the man looks crazy. Well, I am repeating the word man. So when I say the man the second time, I'm referring back to when I first mentioned the word man. So it's a repetition because I'm repeating the same word, and it's anaphora because the referent came before, right? So it comes before, it precedes the word that I'm saying, in this case the man. We also have non-repetitive anaphora, and this is when the head is not identical to that of the antecedent. And again, here we have two subtypes. The first is the direct non-repetitive anaphora. So this is when the referring nominal expression refers to exactly the same entity as the antecedent. So if I say, "There's a man knocking on the door, the bastard looks crazy," well, the bastard is referring directly to man. All right, so it's a direct link, but it's non-repetitive because I'm using a different word. I'm using bastard instead of man in this case. But you know from the context that I mean the same person. We also have indirect non-repetitive anaphora. So this is when the antecedent provides the background for the referent of the referring nominal expression, but the nominal expression does not refer to it directly. So if I say, "When the man forced the door open, I punched him in the face and kicked him in the guts." Here we want to look at the face and the guts. Now, I know that a man has both a face and guts, right? So when I say the face and the guts, even though I haven't mentioned explicitly a face or guts before, you know that I'm actually referring to the man, right? So it's the man's face and it's the man's guts. So both of these two noun phrases refer back to man. Okay, it's not just a random face, it's this particular man's face, okay, that I punch. So it's indirect because it only mentions sort of parts of the man, right? And it is non-repetitive because I'm not repeating the word man. Now, lastly, we also have a different type of reference. So this is still within the category of endophora, and it's called cataphora. And in this case, this is when the referent is located in the following linguistic context, and then the referent might be called the postcedent. So we have this example here. We watched the vessel approach the shore. Upon docking, the giant ship collapsed. So here we're looking at the word the vessel, right? The noun phrase, the vessel. And I haven't mentioned anything about a ship or a vessel before, but the vessel points forward to something that comes afterwards, right? So obviously it points forward to the word ship. The giant ship collapsed. So here the ship then, the word ship, is called the postcedent. Now, in reference, we also distinguish between intrasentential and extrasentential reference, and this applies to both anaphoric and cataphoric reference. So, in intrasentential endophoric reference, the referent is located in the same sentence as the referring nominal expression. That's why it's called intrasentential, right? So intra means inside. Whereas extrasentential endophoric reference, well, here it's located in the linguistic context, but not in the same actual sentence as the nominal referring expression. All right, so extra means outside. Extrasentential means outside the sentence. Now, articles. Well, there are two articles in English, plus a sort of ghost article of sorts, right? It's an invisible one. So the first is the definite article the. This is typically used with definite specific reference, okay? And it can have anaphoric, cataphoric, and sometimes exophoric reference, but it may also be used with generic reference, and it sometimes occurs in proper names as well, right? Where it then has unique reference. The indefinite article, a or n, is typically used with indefinite specific reference. And this is provided that the noun in question is a count noun, but it can also be used with generic reference. And finally, we have this zero article. And the symbol for this looks like the Danish letter Ø, or we call this the empty category, or in Danish, tom mængde. So if you remember from when you did maths, we have a symbol to signify in tom mængde, right, or an empty category. So basically this Ø signifies nothing or zero. And if you remember, in our last session, we also talked about zero determination. Okay, so it's basically when there is no article or there is this empty category there. So this is typically used with indefinite specific reference, often with uncountable nouns, but it can also be used with generic reference. For instance, in the sentence, wine is for sissies, real men drink beer. Now, pronouns, our last topic of today. So, pronouns are traditionally defined as units that replace noun phrases. So, you will not have to repeat the same noun phrase all of the time, but you use a pronoun instead, right? So, pro means that it stands in for a noun, basically. But this is only part of the definition because some pronouns may be used as determiners, all right? And pronouns are often used exophorically as well, and this means that they point to something in the physical, social, or mental context, so they don't necessarily point to anything in the linguistic context. And this pointing function of pronouns is also called deixis. Now you should note that in our book, in the Ullmann-Schwarz model, phrases with pronouns as heads or simple phrases consisting just of pronouns are considered noun phrases, and that's why we're also discussing pronouns today. So here is an overview of the pronoun types of English. So obviously we have personal pronouns, and here we have some examples. We also have possessive pronouns, so here we have the genitive, all right, where you're describing possession of sorts. We also have reflexive pronouns that refer back to yourself or another person. We have reciprocal pronouns, all right, each other and one another. So they refer to each other in a way, right? So they are reciprocal. We also have demonstrative pronouns. They again often point to things, they demonstrate things, they highlight things. We have relative pronouns. So these are used in relative clauses. And they will have a grammatical function in the clause. We have interrogative pronouns. So these ask questions, right? They're used in interrogative clauses. And we have indefinite pronouns. So these are a little bit different. We often don't actually consider them pronouns. So we can see that it's words like some, somebody, all, every, everyone, each, and both. But they're also pronouns actually. So personal pronouns and reflexive pronouns, reciprocal pronouns are usually not used as determiners. So we call these genuine pronouns. So we can see we have an example here, the book. We have the, which is the determiner, and book, which is the head of the noun phrase. If we try and put in a personal pronoun or a reflexive pronoun, we can see that it doesn't really make any sense. He, book, himself, book doesn't actually work. However, possessive pronouns, demonstratives, relative pronouns, interrogatives, they can often be used as determiners. So we can say his book, right? This is a possessive pronoun. Or that book, this is a demonstrative pronoun. Every book, indefinite pronoun. So we can see that these pronouns may function as determiners in the noun phrase. So referential orientation, when we talk about anaphoric reference, cataphoric reference, this also applies to pronouns. So next week we are continuing with the noun phrase. It's going to be a last session on the noun phrase, and we're going to look at modification and modifiers. So in particular, these are pre-modifiers and post-modifiers.